Hey, what up, peeps? Welcome to day 12 of your April number corner. Let's take a look at what we have on tap for today. Remember, we're still upgrading our calendar grid and our calendar collector. Today you have 12 3/4 of an hour and 12 3/4 of a dollar. Make sure you're figuring out that total and what that fraction would be. And today we also have a problem string. But before we get started, under advice from one of my students, I am going to enlarge day 12 because the numbers seem to be pretty small and we need to make sure that you can see them. Figure out what the volume is of that rectangular prism. Look at the length and the width, make sure you're figuring out the base, and then multiplying that by the height. Record that into your calendar grid, and we will move on. Today's lesson deals with a problem string. Now, you may be able to read that. If not, I can read it for you. I believe all of our computers should be fine. Sometimes, if you get on a desktop, larger screen being larger writing, um, we can just I like doing it here because then I can do work on the side of the page over here. All right, so the first one says I had two candy bars and I gave I gave to each of my friends 1/3 of that candy bar. So, how many friends did I give a piece of candy to? So, in other words, how many 1/3s are in two holes? So, I think we need to make some candy bars. So, go ahead and get out your notebooks and we're going to make some candy bars in our notebook. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that and I'm going to do that. That's pretty easy to do. Okay, and now what we're going to do is it says we need to divide them into thirds, right? So if I divide it into thirds, all I have to do is this, and I copy and paste. There we go. Look at that. I'm going to divide this one into thirds, right? And if I imagine what I'm doing here to down here, how many friends would I have? Right. So when I'm doing this, I am actually, what you are doing is you are dividing two candy bars divided by 1/3. 2 divided by 1/3. So how many friends do I have? Right. I have 6 friends. It's pretty easy. Now, when I take a look at this, I can go 2 divided by 1/3, or how else can I see that? Right? It's 2 times 3 because each one of my candy bars is divided into 3. So, what actually is happening to my fraction to give me that answer? Interesting. Let's go ahead and take a look at what this next one says. It says, I have one candy bar, and I gave each of my friends 1/3 of that candy bar. In other words, how many thirds are in one whole? Well, it's just the same sort of thing here. I got to divide one whole candy bar by 1/3. And what does that equal? Well, that's fairly easy to see. I have 3 pieces, so that must mean I have 3 friends. Or I have 1 times 3, and that equals 3. Well, let's go ahead and see if that works for our next problem. Our next problem string says, or our next problem in our problem string says, I had one candy bar and I gave it to each one of my 1/4 of a candy bar to each one of my friends. So how many friends do I have? So in other words, how many fourths are there in one? So I'm going to need to adjust my line here, copy it, and add another one here. And I'm going to put one here, and I'm going to put one here. So how many friends do I have? right? So I'm dividing one candy bar by 1/4. So what does that equal, right? I have 4 friends. This friend's not going to be too happy. They got a really small piece, but that's okay. That's the friend I like less. Or in a multiplication problem, I got 1 divided by, or 1 times 4 equals 4. Do you see the pattern? Because what we're doing is we're taking our whole number and we're actually multiplying it by our denominator here. Interesting. All right, so let's go down to the next one. It says, I had 3 candy bars and I gave each one of my friends 1/4 of a candy bar. How many friends did I have? So in other words, how many fourths are there in 3? So I gotta kind of copy another candy bar and then paste that. So now I have 3 candy bars, and if I'm dividing each one of those candy bars into fourths, how many friends do I have? So our math problem is we're going to take 3 candy bars and divide it by 1/4. And what do you suppose that answer is going to be? 12, right? 3 times 4 equals 12. Because we are taking our whole number and then multiplying it by our denominator when we divide. Nobody likes dividing by fractions anyway. We like just multiplying. All right, the next one says, I had 1 candy bar and I gave each of my friends 1/5 of a candy bar. How many friends did I have? In other words, how many fifths are there in 1 whole? So if I just add another 5th, right, or add another line here, I can as equally as I can, divide my candy bar into 5ths. And now I gave that same friend a little bit more, so now they're going to be happy. How many pieces or how many friends do I have if I divide 1 candy bar into 5ths? So 1 divided by 1/5 equals 5, right? Or 1 times 5 equals 5. All right, let's take a look at our next one. It says I had 4 candy bars and I divided them into fifths. How many friends do I have? In other words, how many fifths are there in 4? So again, we're going to divide 4 candy bars by 1/5. And what does that equal? Right, 20. That's 4 times 5 equals 20. Awesome. All right, next one. It says I have 2 candy bars and I gave each of my friends half of that candy bar. So in other words, how many friends or how many halves are there in 2 candy bars? Well, instead of creating another one, I'm just going to go ahead and move this over here and then look at that. Well, if I have 1 candy bar and I divide it in half, I have 2 friends. If I have 2 candy bars and I divide it in half, I have, did you guys guess the answer? Let's see. We are going to take 2 candy bars and divide them by 1/2, and that's going to equal 4 pieces or 4 friends, right? So 2 times 4 equals, 2 times 2 equals 4. Now here's the last one. It says I have 3 candy bars and I'm going to divide each into 1/10. I'm going to give each of my friends 1/10 of that candy bar, or of those candy bars. How many friends do I have? Now, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to put 10 candy bars out and divide them into tenths, but we have a pattern here, right? If I can take, what is this? I got 3 candy bars divided by 1/10. What does that equal? Do you guys figure out the answer yet? Right, 30. Because if I'm going to divide one candy bar into 10 pieces, I have 10 friends, but I also have 3 candy bars. So 3 times 10, right, is my problem. And that equals 30. All right, nice job today. If you have any questions on today's lesson, feel free to email your teacher. If not, enjoy math.